to another episode of Academy. Today's guest is Roland Hoffman, still here.
Hi.
Roland is Director of Product Marketing at Steinway Lingdorf and today we have a very interesting topic for you, room acoustics.
Yeah, that's a topic we could talk a day about because it's so complex, but we try to keep it short.
Yeah. So, how important is a room? You buy a system, you put it in your room, your living room, a listening room. So, what about the interaction between the two?
Yeah, it's the room has a very, very strong impact on the sound. Basically, loudspeaker and room, acoustically speaking, is one. And that is because sound is not like, or speakers is not really like a TV screen, which is a static thing which you look at. So it's there. Sound is not like that. Loudspeaker emits sound waves. So it's waves into the room. And since most people have a room with a ceiling, a floor, and 4 walls or more, the sound waves are kind of trapped in that room, so something will happen to the sound. Sound is not, or sound waves are not a laser beam from the speaker into your ear, but you can really, sometimes when people ask about how to understand room acoustics, I let them imagine that sound waves are like water waves. So in the low frequencies you have like big powerful waves, and in the higher frequencies you have like fast ripples or water streams. And if you imagine then your speaker emits that, then it's easier to understand what's going on in a room. Because if you imagine around the speaker, there will be suddenly bass waves, water waves coming out. You can immediately almost see, okay, so the bass wave goes to the wall behind the speaker. Where does it go? Nowhere, it comes back. Same happens at the side wall of the speaker. So it hits the wall, comes back, and it creates new waves because it interacts with the original wave.
That's what we call direct and indirect sound.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but it's easier to imagine it when you talk about, or when you imagine these water waves.
Yeah.
And then where you sit, you probably have a wall somewhere behind you. So imagine water waves go there and they come back because they don't go anywhere. They come back, but they come back delayed. So they overlap with the other sound waves that are already there. So then you can easily imagine how messy it all becomes if you imagine all these reflections, all these bass waves coming from everywhere. So it's easier to understand what goes on and what does sound in your room. And it's easier to imagine that, okay, probably a naked wall reflects quite hard. If I have a bookcase, if I have something, shelves, the waves will probably break up. Oh yeah, that's exactly what happens with sound.
How important is the shape of the room, Roland?
The shape is also important. Well, in most of the cases you cannot really do much about it. So the shape of the room is the shape of the room, unless you really build a new house. Then you're lucky, or you renovate something and you can move walls and so on. The walls, the dimensions of the room, they matter so much acoustically, because again, imagine these water waves, and if you have a water wave and a length, the waves would reflect different than in a little small box. So the worst would be a room which is, hopefully no one has that, which is like a cube.
Yeah.
So you have like 3 meters, 3 meters, and 3 meters high. Why is that a problem? Because every problem that comes in these 3 meters is multiplied with the width and with the height of the room. So you have 3 times the same type of problem. So the problems get enormous. And the problems are like some frequencies are way too loud, some cancel out, and some hard reflections and so on.
Is there something like a golden ratio?
Yeah, there's something like a golden ratio, and that is to move away from this equal. And if you make the width of the room, the length of the room unequal, and even like a golden ratio or something, and then also the height of the room, that breaks up these sound waves in a good way. So the more uneven you make it, and also avoid doubling, like for example 3 times 6 meter is better than 3, but it's still exact double, so some problems will still exaggerate. But of course, you don't really have free choice to do that, but just it's good to understand and know that, because then it's easier to see, okay, that's why I have problems in this room, because I measured it and it's almost like same width and same length, for example. And then it's easier to understand it, but not really, you cannot really do much about it.
Is bass performance better in a smaller room or a larger room?
In a smaller room, it more easily fills up and gets too much, and in a longer room or wider room, again, bass waves, they spread more evenly and they have more time, more space to go somewhere. So bigger rooms are usually better. However, you also have that if you have a very big room and you know it from a hall, for example, then the so-called reverb, that's the delayed reflection coming back, it really goes, it takes even longer, so it becomes more echoey. But in general, there's less compression in the bass the bigger the room goes.
Roland, this is Academy, so let's try and list up some good advice, some tips. Let's say 5 tips for our viewers to what they can do at home without almost no money.
Can we do 50? No, 5? Let's try 5. Let's try. So my number 1 would definitely be find a good spot for the speakers. And by good spot, I mean that sound good. So you don't need to be a sound engineer to do that. It basically needs a pair of speakers and your ears and play music and really focus on whether it sounds good or not. And again, what is good, what isn't good? Well, it's A/B comparison, so it doesn't really matter. Of course, you can do a very scientific approach and measure this and measure that and analyze. Let's skip that. Number 1 advice is use your ears and change something. Move the speakers closer together. Does it sound better or not? Move them further apart. Does it sound better or not? Move them further to the back or more front. How does it change? How do you perceive it? That's what counts. It matters second how it measures, but trust your ears. So you can get very, very far by just trial and error and find a good spot for the speakers, because the speakers interacting with the room, that has by far the biggest influence on the sound.
I guess the second tip is then first the speaker placement, then the placement of yourself. Where do you sit?
Exactly. So before you even dig into different amplifier sounds, different streamer, DA converters, all these things, again, room acoustics rule, and that is basically the speakers and yourself, where you sit. And of course, some people are limited in where they can sit. So you cannot sit in the, like 2 meters into the room. But I still would do this experiment and move around and move forward and move back and a little bit and listen again, just to see how good can it sound like. And afterwards, you can still, okay, this is where it sounds really, really good. And then you can think about, okay, can I do that in this room? Can I place the furniture maybe a little bit differently that I can listen here? But it's still a good experiment because then you know how good it can sound like.
A good starting point could be using a triangle between the speakers and yourself.
Yeah, that's always the stereo triangle, of course, that always counts. Why? Because that's exactly how the music was mastered, recorded, produced, mixed in the studio.
Yeah.
So they have this perfect stereo triangle. So the closer you move to how it was recorded, the closer you move to how good it can sound like. Because they sit in this perfect triangle, and they have also spent time on the room and how to make a good working environment for them. So that should be a stereo triangle. So always try to sit in the middle. I think that's the golden rule anyway. But apart from that, where do you sit? Where's the best distance from the speaker? There's no rule in the world and no blog and forum and opinion to tell you that. You have to listen to in your own living room. And A sounds better than B, and then you know it.
Yeah. Tip 3.
Number three would be have furniture and, things in the room. Very simple. An empty room sounds terrible.
Yeah.
And a room packed with visually too many things actually sounds pretty good. Why? Because remember thinking of sound waves and so on. Waves that are broken up by furniture, by bookcases, by even a table, by things in the room, even out the sound waves, the water waves, in a good way. So that's always good. It almost doesn't matter should the armchair be there or there. Waves are, distributed more evenly if that armchair is in the room, and if you have almost no furniture, you have almost no chance to make it sound good. So bring in furniture, have soft fabric, drapes, carpet, everything helps. You can almost not do too much because it's not absorbing, tools. They absorb in a quite normal, natural way and help to improve the sound. Full stop.
2 more tips to go.
2 more tips?
Yeah.
Number 3.
We're at 4 now.
We're number 4 already.
Yeah.
Oh, good. So, number 4 would be that you choose the right speaker for your room.
Yeah.
So that's not about find the right spot for it. It's really very often people have a way too big speaker that overpowers in the bass, and you can shift the speaker all night. You probably will not really make it sound tight and controlled because the speaker is too big. Or the opposite, you fall in love with a tiny bookshelf, two-way audiophile speaker, but it's too small for the room. Or you sit way too far away, you sit too far away from that speaker. And that's pure physics. It's, as I said, speaker and room acoustically is one. So you really have to find the right speaker size for that room, for the room size, for the listening distance, and where you sit and where you place the speakers.
I think that's a neat job cut out for the dealer. If they can, if you walk in a dealer and you have like a short list of 1, 2, 3 speakers that you would like, they can guide you, advise you, but ultimately they can provide you to listen to the speakers at home and do the ultimate test, because it's not the same listening to the speaker at the dealer and at home could make a difference. So I think there's some added value for the dealer.
Definitely, good dealers do that. Let you do that. You cannot really have a list of 10 and compare the specs and then make the right buying decision. You have to get some guidance from someone or from yourself, or try out 2 or 3 different speakers. And you will easily hear it. You don't need to, it's not a complex thing. Again, trust your ears. It always works. And one speaker will suddenly like, oh, that works well. And that's not only because of the tweeter or the mid-range driver or the voice coil or the magic crossover. Very often it's just that speaker has that magic combination with the room acoustics, why it sounds better.
Well, we haven't spent a dime yet. It's only the tips only cost some time and effort.
Yeah.
But I'm sensing, I'm feeling that the 5th one is going to be about some kind of room correction.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that would be my number 5 for sure. And if we, not only because we are from Lingdorf Audi and we have Room Perfect, but in general, it's 2025 and using DSP either in an active speaker or in a very clever amplifier just goes much, much further than any trial and error. Because let's face it, imagining sound waves like water waves, shifting speakers around, marking on the floor, it's only trial and error, and you listen with your ears, and eventually you find a good spot and a good speaker and so on. But first of all, it's always a little bit of guesswork. It's very subjective. So whereas a room correction can accurately measure the problems and do something about it, so we are not really good at it scientifically. So that is a much more scientific and better approach. And secondly, you can even have a too big speaker, or too close to the wall, or sit too close to the wall. When you say, hey, I cannot do anything about it, that's how it is, and I love this speaker, I want to have it, then room calibration can really help you, because it can address some room acoustic problems without you having to reshape the whole living room.
In general, and simply put, what does room correction do and how does it work?
Room correction is actually doing almost a little bit magic, because it corrects something in the signal before the problem even happens. And some people say, but how can that work? How can that be like a forward correction? But that's actually what's happening. So every calibration basically in principle works the same, not sound wise, but in principle works the same, that it measures the room response and it does something to the original signal in the digital domain to, for example, reduce some sound energy at a frequency which has a lot of problems. So, for example, let's imagine you have a very boomy bass around 80 Hertz, just to have one example. The microphone will detect that and it will reduce the sound energy in the original signal around these 80 Hertz, so that the speaker emits less sound energy around 80 Hertz into the room. So it causes less problems in the first place. And that's actually even more clever than sending this problem into the room, the sound energy in the room, and putting a bass trap in the corner. That's actually an afterthought.
Yeah.
So you send too much energy and then you take it away. The more clever approach is, why send it in the room in the first place? Reduce that energy and you don't even have that problem in the first place.
Why would adding energy to the room be a bad idea?
That is, the opposite is that sometimes you have too much energy, and some other room acoustic problems that has a lack of energy.
The nodes.
The room nodes, the standing waves, cancelling out effects, and it's also called. And then very, very simple room correction systems, they would even that out by pumping even more in the gap. But it's a gap, it's a null. And if you have more sound energy into that gap, the speaker would work even harder and the amplifier would work harder, but you will still missing that frequency because it's a null. It's physics. You cannot fill it up. But very simple systems, they try to, and that's wrong. So you need a really good correction system with a very clever algorithm who doesn't fall into the trap, by the very meaning, of filling up a gap just blindly. That would be wrong.
Yeah, one last question to this topic. Why would going to a shop and buying lots of acoustical equipment or tools, products, be a bad idea?
I would first of all always go with what I always call natural room acoustic treatment, and that is drapes and carpet and fabrics and cushions and everything, because they don't work so strong. All these acoustic bass traps and panels and diffusers, they are very effective, so that's a good thing, but it's very easy to overdo it. So you say, I have a very noisy room, or it sounds very echoey, so let's buy 10 panels and put them left and right on the wall. And then usually the opposite happens. You end up with a very dead sounding room. Or you put a bass trap in the corner, which doesn't only, let's imagine this 80 Hertz problem again, it doesn't only reduce 80 Hertz, it kills much more. So you end up with a very lean bass. So it's like overkill. So all the tools are very effective, fine, but they are tools, and they are for a specific frequency by a specific amount of decibel.
Yeah.
Which frequency? How many decibel? Have you measured the problem? Do you know exactly? And do you buy the right thing for the right problem? That's very often a little bit like, again, trial and error. And you buy these things and you find out, no, that doesn't solve the problem.
So that's more for advanced users.
Yes, it's a pretty advanced thing. It looks simple. So, it sounds, I have a reflection, so I buy something and put it on the wall.
Yeah.
It's not that simple.
Well, there you have it. 5 concrete tips to get started to treat your room acoustics. Costs nothing, not a penny, just some time and effort. So that's a wrap up for this Academy session. Thank you very much, Roland.
Yeah, happy listening.
See you on the next one.